Hello, I'm Heather Brooks, and welcome to the Right Women Book Fest 2025 virtual panel discussion, Poetry Souls Talking, with poets Zorina Frey, Mari B., Laura Nissley, and Kathleen Hellen. The panel tonight is moderated by Prince George's County poet and founder of EC Poetry and Prose, Patti Little Pie Ross. Patti has been the MC and poetry partner for the Right Women Book Fest since our first year. Thank you so much for being with us, everybody. I really appreciate it. I'm really looking forward to tonight's panel. I always learn something new, and we always have so many amazing, smart, interesting people involved with the Right Women Book Fest. Take it away, Patty.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Heather. We really appreciate this opportunity. And just so you know, EC Poetry and Prose is all over the state of Maryland, of which I am too. I'm all over Maryland, DC, Virginia, North everywhere. So, Souls Talking was my way of sort of poetic expression about like our inner self, our spirit, the universe as it sort of transcends into, into words, right? Like with um, sort of dealing with our truths and vulnerabilities. And so I just wanted to put that out there in the beginning so that people had a better understanding about what exactly we're talking about when we talk about souls talking in terms of poetry, right? Um, so I'm just going to sort of go around my screen in terms of asking questions. And I know that you introduced all the poets, which is great. And if the poets have something else they want to say, certainly chime in. But my first question to you poets is going to be, what first drew you to poetry, right? Like what brought you to it? What do you love about it? Was it an experience? Was it a person? What was it that made you pick up that pen and write that first poem? And so Mari, if you can share with us, that'd be great. I'm just going around the screen, no particular order.
Yeah, so I think what first drew me to poetry, I think poetry sometimes I see it as kind of like a song without the music in the way that it expresses what goes on in our day-to-day lives, what goes on, the inner machinations of people's minds. And so seeing, like, I was very accustomed to reading prose. And so seeing poetry, reading it, and in my case, my foray into poetry, I guess the most prominent one was in spoken word. That was actually back in high school. I had a teacher who was fond of sharing TED Talks with us. And there was one TED Talk that was featuring Sarah Kay in her work as a spoken word artist. And that kind of just drew me into it of the way that she expressed it, the way that she, bared her heart out to the audience, and the audience received that. And so I've been trying to see if I could emulate that in my own work, but certainly a continuous journey.
Yeah, yeah, I can understand that. And then Zarina, did you want to pick that up for us again as to, what first drew you to poetry?
Trauma. I had lost a friend, and it was my first experience with death, and I was trying to make sense of my new reality without her. And, was just really difficult for me to unpack that she was gone. It was hard to believe, like, where did she go? And that was the beginning of poetry, because it's such a celestial craft of just looking into the in between of things, the almost, um, the duende of existing.
Yeah. I mean, grief is such a strong emotion too, right? So then it really forces itself on you and out of you. So,
Hmm.
Kathleen, if you want to share with us what first drew you to poetry?
Hmm, it's a good question. I think I was always writing to myself. I was, I always felt growing up like an outsider in the community where I lived. So I started kind of talking to myself. It was an internal dialogue. And then I became sort of captivated by the music of it. I remember reading Gerard Manley Hopkins' poem, Margaret, Spring and Fall to a Young Child. And it starts out, Margaret, are you grieving over Golden Grove unleaving? Leaves like the things of man, you with your fresh thoughts care for, can you? And I heard the music, and it was like a spiritual. Um, yeah, I know Hawkins is Jesuit, but it was a spiritual sense of, I don't know, connecting to the universe for me. And that was the beginning. I was hooked on the music ever since.
Lori, did you want to?
Yeah. I guess for me, childhood was messy. Let's call it that. And I was mad and I was confused and I was absolutely convinced that there had to be a way to manage this. And then on top of all that, like I had some very confusing ideas being thrown at me about how a girl should behave and this and that. And God bless, much like Mari said, the high school English teacher who handed me a book, and it was the complete poems of Anne Sexton.
Oh,
And I had never seen poetry like that. I I was struck by how, I mean, she was abused and she was an abuser. And she also had mess all around her. And she just owned that and cut it down into these concrete lines and just something to look at and to hear and know that she made that. And that's the start of me thinking, I can make my thing too.
yeah, yeah. I love Sylvia Plath for that same
Yes.
reason, that
Yeah.
that's just that vulnerability that
Mhm.
comes out,
Absolutely.
yeah, on the page. And so I was wondering, so we've gotten to where what drew you to poetry. But then, poetry is not easy, right? And so there has to be something that continues to pull you to it, because there's so many different, forms and presentations. I know that myself and Laurie and Zarina tend to be spoken, can do the spoken piece. I know Kathleen and Laurie do, writing. Laurie does prose writing. So I'm just curious as to what is it that keeps you going, that continues to write? Because I mean, all of you all here have, a long list of poems. So I'm just curious about what keeps you going. And I'm just going to keep going in that same order, if we don't mind. And if somebody, I mean, just has something jumping off their chest, certainly feel free to jump in. But I'm just going to ask you again, Maury, what does keep you going now that we know, what started it? What keeps it going?
Yeah, what keeps it going, and kind of to touch on Kathleen's point, because that reminded me, growing up, this kind of identity formation and kind of absorbing and observing what's going on around me. And I continue to do that now in my, now that I'm much older. But I think I find that I draw a lot of inspiration as far as it can be as mundane as, I don't know, light filtering through leaves, because I love nature, and I feel like I have to describe that or encapsulate in that in some series of words that might manifest as a poem. Sometimes it's also just, life experiences. I think something in my recent past that really brought me to write poetry was, visiting my homeland after, so I'm Filipino. I had not seen my relatives in over 14 years. And in the most recent time I saw them was last spring, 2024. And it was such a transformative experience. In some ways, it felt like coming home. In other ways, it felt, I hadn't known them I hadn't really kept in touch. So they're also practically strangers. So it felt like this poetry was a way for me to navigate that in between, to navigate sort of the joy and the celebration of being reunited, but also the grief that arose as I was there. and also a way to process, interestingly at that time, I wasn't speaking English at all. I was actually speaking another language. And so I found that the poetry I wrote thereafter, returning to America, I wanted it to kind of, capture that sort of in between, or that translation going between two languages. So yeah, there's a few examples of kind of what keeps me going and continuing to write.
Wow. Wow. Thank you for sharing. Zorina, could you share with us what keeps you going? Because you do quite a bit of writing, really, period. It was funny. I was listening to Hamilton, and they talk about how, the play, Lin-Manuel, and how much he writes and writes and writes. And I thought, Zorina.
Thank you. For me, it's duty and purpose. I should probably flip that on its head. It's purpose. I feel like it's self-serving. The moment I start writing, I feel like I am doing what I was created to do. And any doubt of what I'm supposed to do, or if I need to, if all the ifs and all that, just melt away. I feel like when I'm writing, I'm in my element, and then I'll go with purpose or duty, because um, we as writers, as creatives, we are pretty much just, I would say, we're reporting reality in our own artistic way, and we're recording history, and so doing that. And the more creatives who can do that, the more rich our history will reflect as such. Um, and the other thing is, um, I feel like I write better than I speak. And there was a time where I would just, in my early years, where I would just talk, and and I found that words are currency. And so, I try to make sure that when I'm talking, that I'm choosing my words selectively. And that's where the overthinking comes in. And that's where the poet sprouts.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think you can be in the poetry business without having a little bit of selfishness. When I used to be working, it was always like, what's in it for me? What's in it for them? What's in it? But I think in terms of poetry, you have to have that little piece that you're in it for yourself, as well. Um, I don't think you can do this work without having that piece of it. Kathleen, did you want to share with us what
Oh,
keeps you going? You've written many books and submitted well over many poems and been recognized as such. So, what keeps you going? Because you're still going. We have critique on Monday, and I know you have something you're going to share with the group.
I do. Um, it's gotten to the point in my life where I can't even think of myself as not writing. It has become so much a part of who I am. It's like air I breathe. I read it, I write it, I read it, I write it. I mean, it's just so much a part of who I am. I can't imagine myself not writing. In fact, if I go a couple of days without writing, I like if I'm away from my desk or away from home, I feel strange. I feel like there's something wrong with me, and my physical sense of myself starts to get really strange and frustrated and odd. So it's in me, and everything that I see is a poem. I mean, I look at a tree. Oh, there's a poem. I mean, it's as if reality has become poetry for me. I know that sounds odd. And to Zarina's point, there's also this sense of obligation. We need, as poets, to be witnesses to what is going on right now. I feel that so much in my heart and soul that we have to write it. And, just sit down, pick up that pen and write it. Even if you feel so depressed about everything that's going on right now, you still have to write it. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And Lori, I know, can you answer that same question?
It's a lot of pieces that fall into place at once, but when I have to winnow it down, I would say conversation. I often it's with myself, but it's that whole idea of I don't always have it in me to write, to actually do the physical process of it. But I feel fortunate that I feel like I'm writing all the time. And it's because of that conversation I'm having with myself where, in terms of poetry, I'll see something and like all of a sudden I understand it differently. And then I know who I want to show that to. Yeah, and I had another thought. Let me think. The other thing that often works for me as well, I do a lot of writing related to mental health. I try very hard. Some of you have heard me explain before that when I first was having mental health issues and I wanted to understand, I could find like practical, non-fictional information. And I even found a couple of like fictional, right? With that once removed kind of description of it. And I really wanted to describe to anybody else who needed to know it, what it feels like. And I know I'm kind of jumping all over the place here. And then the final thing that, it always draws me back into it is I tell myself, the thing I would never write is, and then I write it down.
Yeah, I think that as poets, and when you make that distinction of yourself, when you say I'm going to become a poet or I am a poet, you have accepted the vulnerability that's within
Yes.
that, right? Because
Yes.
you really can't do that work without having without being
Absolutely.
vulnerable, right?
Yes.
Without having the vulnerability of it. I do want you guys to read some of your work, just to, just maybe get, a poem in or so. And so, we'll go. I have another question, and so while the other person's answering the question, maybe you can queue up or see something that you want to read. So we've all talked about, grief and trauma, and vulnerability. Nobody talked about love, but I'll talk about love, or giving up love, or getting rid of love, or I think I've done all of those. So finding it, refinding it. But what I was going to ask you guys is, how do you navigate writing about that thing, whatever it is, if it's grief, if it's trauma, if it's, love, or whatever, with with getting vulnerable, but not to the point where you have lost yourself completely in the writing, right? Because we journal, which we can lose ourselves in that, and have that there. But when we're writing, particularly for an audience, we want to have that vulnerability, but at the same time, we don't want to, go down a rabbit hole, or drag somebody into something that
Scare them.
right, exactly. Scare them. Right, exactly. So I'm just gonna go around and ask, how do you sort of navigate that when you're looking at your writing, and then if while that person's speaking, other people can kind of find a little something to read to us. So I'm going to start with you, Mari, again.
Okay. I think as far as navigating it, so I'm not as practiced as the other poets here in reading before an audience. But I think what helps for me is recognizing as I'm writing that it's an iterative process, right? So I'll read it once and I'll find that it's okay, and then wait, take a beat, come back the next day, read it again, and find that depending on how I'm feeling, I might, take something differently away from that poem. But at the end of the day, what has to be consistent is, what do I want the audience to take away from this? Regardless of how much I want to express something, what is the key impression that I want to leave with whoever will eventually be reading or hearing this poem? And so I try to keep that in mind. And I know I tend to be very verbose in my writings. And so, in reading through the successive drafts, I kind of try to whittle down, like, okay, do these verses need to be here? Can I remove certain stanzas? That sort of thing. So I think it's in that editing process, kind of keeping the goal in mind of what impression I want to leave with the reader. That kind of maintains my focus.
Okay. Yeah, I understand that. Zorina, did you want to share about how you navigate?
Yeah, of course. I learned the hard way. I remember a time when I was a friend of mine, a colleague had, he's actually a magician, and is booked all over in Indiana at these schools. And he had, I was an early poet, still, well, really mad at the world then, and 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 he had invited me to as the poet of his set. Well, I got on stage. This was a high school, and I kept it real, talking about teen sex and all that. And it was to the point. And long story short, the principal shut the assembly down. It's funny now. And it was just a mixed reaction, because while the kids loved it, I mean, they were chasing
Mhm.
me out the door, walking me out the door, like, that was so cool, I need to hear that, because it was about practicing safe sex and self-care and all that. But I kept it real. And the the principal was just livid. She's like, "Oh, I'm gonna get all these calls from the parents." And I'm like, "Well, I'm just talking about what they're dealing with." And she responds by saying, "Our kids don't deal with those issues."
Mhm.
So in saying that, you pretty much know I was, just where I was,
Right.
you know. And and so I learned from that experience and saying, okay, what's the theme? What's the audience? Where are we? Um, and uh, and I don't so much as edit my work. And then I understand it really depends on where you are in your writing career, you know. Um, because at a time I probably would have had to do that, like go into and just have different versions of a poem. But now I just look at the poem itself. I'm like, okay, I'm not doing that one. I'm not doing that one.
Mhm.
I have this. So as your catalog grows, then you can have these different pieces for specific audiences.
Yeah, yeah. I was invited to a Catholic girls' high school to read, and I said, well, how did you, like you called me what? And the gentleman said, well, read your book, and it's really great, and this and another. And I'm thinking, there's nothing in that book that I can read to this all Catholic girls, all these all Catholic girls, because, can I use profanity? And he's like, well, just remember who you're talking to. And I'm like thinking, okay, so I end up pulling nothing from the book. I read something completely different. But anyway, so I understand what both of you guys are saying there. Kathleen, can you tell, what, in terms of navigating all the various different emotions and moods and things like that in terms of your writing when you're presenting?
Well, you know, um, I, when I present, I do think about who the audience is. But I figure if they come to see you, then they must know a little bit about you. So I think about it, but I don't let that interfere with um, the way in which I select a poem so much as because I think, for example, if I'm writing about climate change, or if I'm writing about a personal thing, or if I'm writing about something that is affecting me on sort of in a psychological way, um, if the poem is good, it should touch something human in the audience. And the fact that I would, sort of censor myself to, sort of craft, something that is suitable for an audience, to me just feels, I don't know, it feels counterfeit, if that makes sense. I'm all about like this is me, this is what I write, and you're either going to enjoy it or you're not going to. I don't like every poet I read, but that's not going to stop them from writing what they write, and I don't think it should affect me. I mean, I'm just. In fact, I've been doing. I know this is a little tangent, but I've been sort of breaking with the the kind of writing that I've been doing for a really long time, which has been introspective, personal, and political. But I'm in this frame of mind now where I have decided that I just want to do something new. So I've been going back to prose poems. I've been experimenting with prose poems. I've been looking at some of the techniques from poets who are writing during other times of chaos and revolution. And I'm talking about poets who are writing in the 40s and 50s. I'm talking about Baudelaire. In the February Revolution. The February Revolt. I mean, that's 1840, right? I'm looking at him. Other poets writing during Nazi occupations, for example, Paul Celan, Yanis Vistos. I find such, just a kind of connection with these poets who are writing in these moments of great social and cultural upheaval, political upheaval, that I'm going in that direction. And I really don't, think about whether or not somebody's going to like what I'm writing now.
Yeah, but I mean, Kathleen, I think you've been doing that for a while, though. That's that your writing also has often been a social justice writing, has often been a commentary on what's happening of the times. And if you guys haven't seen Kathleen perform or read before, she's very much, as she said, relaxed, because she'll get up in the chair and sit crisscross and then start reading like she's reading, which it was a big, huge audience. And I loved how you got in the chair and just began to read to us, and it really pulled everybody in. That was a wonderful reading you did a couple years back at City Lit. So, Laura, I know that you have a lot of prose writing as well in your writing, and I feel like a lot of yours really for this question in terms of navigating, writing in terms of what if it came out of a lot of your experiences. I mean, I know you've shared that with us before, and from when you did your first reading for us and then to where we are now. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that push for your writing and the audience that you're thinking of when you're writing.
It's at different points that who the audience is comes in. It's usually pretty close to the beginning, and then it usually evolves. So like the one essay you're familiar with, Cube Driving, that started as like a 500-word letter almost to a dear friend who I also think of as a writing partner. And as I wrote that, I realized, oh, you want to say these things to Michael. And it was like the first time I had written in like 30 years. And it ended up being a 13,000 word
Right.
essay. But I think when I think about that one in particular, I start to see, like, I think of things very visually, like, like the old radios that would have like the treble and the bass and the little slide thing that goes back and forth. Um, and some of the ones I think of often is you cannot be brave if you are not scared. You cannot be strong if you are not vulnerable. You cannot find understanding without having conflict. And you cannot share without reflecting. And so when I'm writing, I feel like I almost like, and there are other ones sometimes too, but I almost feel like I'm, balancing it. Like how much brave and how much scared, and, where does this piece of writing fall on that scale?
Mhm, mhm.
Um, yeah. And and again, I go back to the thing I would not write is, and then I try to write it.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely understand that too, because I think sometimes even with my own, I think now, well, I'm so old, I can go ahead and say it, right? It's like, okay, I'm not working, I don't have a job, I don't have to worry about the job anymore, I don't have to worry about anything else anymore. It's like I'm just gonna say it, and put it out there, and hopefully it's received, but if it's not received, that's okay too. And then, hopefully people will go away. Sometimes, as we all know, we'll find that you know, we'll have a line in a poem or something that a verse or something that really is not wasn't the main point of what we were trying to get across in the poem. And then someone from the audience or someone will send us an email, or something, and say, hey, that really resonated with me. That was, I thought you were talking about me. How did you know, that I went through that same thing. And so I think that, yes, I think as we all do, we do think about audience, but I don't think I know out of the poets that I work with that we don't really
Right.
give audience any type of any type of credence within what we're trying
Right.
to do and create, right?
Yeah.
As
And
creators.
I feel like in terms of audience, I move from like the specific to the larger. Like once I relate it to Michael, then I could understand how that related to other people more outside of myself and could find that sort of common thing that you're talking about.
Yeah, yeah, and I think, and in your writing, you actually do see that in some of the um Laura has a collection that'll be coming out later in 2026, but you can even see in that in some of your poems where you start, and I think we all do this, where you can start in the beginning of the poem really talking about maybe to a specific person, to a specific situation, and then as that poem grows, it sort of gathers feet and roots and goes out into the rest of the universe, the audience. So I did ask you guys to read something of your work because we would love to hear it. And so, again, I'm probably just gonna, I know it's boring, but I'm just gonna go around. I didn't want to skip around too much, so that everybody kind of had equal time. If you could share just the title of your poem, and maybe if you want to, if there is, a one or two line about what it's about, if you want to share that, certainly do. But if you don't, that's cool too, because I know some of us, like sometimes me, I'll just throw it out there and hope you get it. So it's up to you as the poet. So we'll start with Mari, and then go to Zorina, and then Kathleen, and then Lori.
And then, Patty, just to clarify, do you want me to read the whole poem or just like an overview, just a few stanzas of it?
If it's not terribly long, I mean, we don't have a lot of time left, but everybody's probably got a minute, 2 minutes, so you've got a little bit of time to read your poem. I do want to do a follow-up question, so I think if everybody kind of keeps it to under 2 minutes, we'll have time to wrap up too as well. But I wanted the audience, I want people to see what you all do, see your work, and particularly because we have such a wonderfully diverse group of poets here in terms of your writing and your craft, right? And we're just so fortunate to have all of you all here that, to me, it would be shameful if I didn't let your words go out to the people. So,
Sure. So I'll start. So my poem, this is a kind of a departure from how I usually write, but this poem is called Here's to My Anti-Library. And I kind of framed it as an ode to all of the books that I have yet to read, which is what an anti-library is. So I'll just read a couple stanzas, which is in the middle of the poem. Here's to my anti-library, to pages not yet turned, to spines unbent and corners crisped and morals soon to learn. My reading habits quite haphazard, less Spartan, more sporadic. If books are destinations, I admit I am nomadic. That's like a little bit of it.
I love that poem though. You should have kept going, but that was very good. You started us out with rhyme, so that's great. That's great. Zorina, did you want to?
Yeah, that was lovely. It had a nice cadence. I was with you. I was ready. This poem is not published. It may very well still be a work in progress, but I like where it is right now. It's called Blackout. 1. Thunderstorms were my first church. It's how I learned about God and his thunder. Every time there was a thunderstorm, my sister turned the television off and told us all to be silent. She shut the lights off too. Listen, she said, to God howling and whistling through the trees, bracing ourselves for the breaking thunderclap. My sister said rain was God crying. I understand tears nurture life. Thunder shook the house. It's because we're so close to the water, she said. God rained into the water and the world shook. They are one and the same, God and water. 2. We weren't allowed to eat or drink. Quiet. My sister said he was bowling, but I knew it was his voice interrupting my Saturday morning cartoons, shifting tectonic plates, and my little thoughts repositioning my place in this world like a thunderous voice submerged in water, witnessing lightning in his veins, me, his child, growing inside him, thrashing. 3. I am the tempest.
Very nice. Very nice. That's interesting. We used to have to turn everything off and sit in the front room. in the front room. Kathleen, you understand that too?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so all right. This goes to the point about witnessing. This is a recent poem, and it was written after I went to the No Kings rally at Patterson Park in Baltimore. And the poem is called Panopticon. Panopticon is this centralized surveillance system in a penitentiary, in a prison system, and it's able to look in all directions at all times, right? So the title comes from that, Panopticon. Can you say it? What you see in the margins, outside the crowd, outside the route you marched from vantage of a hilltop. Say you see the toddler on broad shoulders, holding on. See the weathered, hardened hands that might have harvested the bright tomatoes you'll want later, put into your cart. See others, too, who signaled in the early morning lots, their hammers wanting nails, their trowels wanting yards to feed the table. See arms that rocked the colic, mocked, turned down beds, turned up sleeves to check in for detentions. See, along the wall, perilous, retaining, under cover of a tree that might be cross. The speech is done, the politician's gone. Say it, gracias, under the roving eye of sporing helicopters.
Nice. Very nice. Thank you. Lori, did you want to?
Yeah, this is actually the first time I've read this to anybody other than myself. And I hope it's not longer than I realize it is, but I don't think it's too long. But I think it really illustrates some of the things we've talked about tonight in terms of process and whatnot. And it's called Waiting. When I see him, I will think that his eyes stayed blue until he was 3. That blue was the color of my grandmother's eyes and blue willow china, and now it is the color of his paper scrubs. I will hate that I am getting better at this. Hate that I remembered to grab the phone charger, that I know where the vending machines are. I will hate that I recognize the security guard who was here the last time. I will hate that this might be a rehearsal for the day he actually does it. I will pray. I will pray that the heat of sick in my throat will not turn to choking cinders in my mouth. Pray that his life will not turn to soot and dust, will not rain down on us like the sky falling from Pompeii. I will pray that this love that is our house does not crumble under the weight of ash. I will refuse to think of the word crumble, because then I might. When I see him, I will not cry. There is a whole room for waiting. When I am there, I will cry. I will cry so hard that my ex brings me a Coke and Kleenex and pats me on the knee, and I will let him. I will let him because his son wants to die. I will take the Kleenex and drink the Coke and pull my shit together. I will wait and remember. I will remember waiting in my nightgown on my left side for weeks and weeks, waiting to know he was okay. Remember waiting while he learned to sleep, about patting his back into the tick of the clock. Remember waiting out the first day of middle school. All of this practice waiting for him to be okay. I will wait and think. I will think about the crocheted blanket I made before he was born, so that there would be a piece of me for him to hold, about how I wrapped string over stick and hook until it was something he could work in his fingers while he laid there and learned how to sleep. I will remember. I will remember that he is my genes and my work and my poem, but he is not mine now. I will remember that when they bring him the pills in the tiny cup. I will think about the way the words hope and fear hurt the same way. I will think of love and hate, of cry and fear. I will think about how these words are both nouns and verbs. I will want to choose verbs, to do something. But there will be nothing to do but wait. I will pray. I will pray to God that even though I don't think he is there, I will create my God myself. I will blow breath into the dry dust that my life is becoming. I will speak into the void and make God into the things I need right now. I will love, hate, cry, and fear, and all this while I wait.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies, so much. I do have one final question. I do want to give one comment, and that is that I hope that everybody goes and looks you ladies up and looks at what you've done, because I know you all, pretty intimately, and everything and what you've read here is different from when I first met you, when I first heard you and when I first met you. And I mean, I don't know enough to say if it's growing, if it's what, but it's just beautiful to see the spectrum of your writing, right? So, but I do want to ask one last question because I think it's a very important question, and hopefully we can wrap it up in just, I think we have like 3 minutes to wrap it up, performance to wrap it up in. And that is, you know, the world right now is overwhelmed and noisy, right? And it's chaotic. It's just really, as a friend of mine says, it's upside down, right? What role, and I know for myself what I believe what role poets play in it, but I just want to hear from you all briefly. What role do you think poets play in really showing what's happening in the world today? And I'm going to I'm going to do a little different this time. I'm going to start with Kathleen because I know that Kathleen has been an
Mhm.
on the boots protest poet. And so a boots on the ground protest poet. And I'm going to start with her. And guys, we just have a few minutes, so just try to wrap it quickly as you can. But Kathleen, would you please share?
Yeah, okay. I guess my first thought about that is that as poets, we have a responsibility. You know, Shelley said, poets are the legislators of the world, right? So it seems to me that we need to speak. We cannot be silenced. The whole question of freedom of speech, is in our hands right now. It's not just comedians and politicians and everybody else, but it's us too. We need to say it, and we need to say it loud.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Maury, do you have something to add to that? Or?
Yeah, I think maybe a couple things. So one would be the responsibility of poets. I mean, certainly bearing witness to all of the tragedy, all of the chaos that we're seeing, but particularly bearing witness and bringing to light how that is internally affecting people. And I think poetry, it can connect people across different times and places, but it can also connect us back to our humanity and to why we can't lose hope despite how difficult and just unsettling things can be. And I think as another thing that um, poetry can convey, like for the practice of those who write it and in sharing it, is also helping us reconnect with that humanity so that we don't feel like we're just another cog in the machine, but that we are fully human, and that spiritual side, that side that says that people deserve justice and that
Mhm.
we can fight for it and we can keep it on, and despite how difficult it can
Yeah,
be, we can still win. There's a possibility of winning. That's
yeah,
what poetry can convey.
yeah, yeah. I think too also with, writing being such a individual sport or not sport, but creative um piece, craft, it's important for community, right? And I think that's the other piece of that. Laura, did you have something that you wanted to add?
Uh, yeah, I've been thinking, especially when Kathleen has been talking about when I was young and the night the Berlin Wall fell. And the image I will always, that will be my image of that, was there was an old man, very old, who had a hammer, just a regular old hammer. And
Mm,
he just kept hitting and hitting the wall. And then a young man walked over and picked him up so that he could hammer at the top. And then, of course, that, had everybody cheering and renewed and, continuing. And I think that's part of what we have to do. Like, whatever our hammer is, and wherever we are along the wall, you just keep hammering and you keep talking and you keep sharing and you keep listening.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. Um, Zorina, I know that you've written so many great pieces that talk to speaking up and speaking out, not just in some of the things that you've written, but also in your performance pieces and then in your plays and other things that you've done. I know you can sort of give us some real great advice on the poet's impact. I mean, in the, in the short time that I've known you and all that you've been able to do and accomplish, I feel like that's your sort of justice work, right? Of putting yourself out there, making sure that, your words are heard. And so, what more can we do as poets to sort of, soften the noise maybe for others, but at the same time, um, highlight what the injustices that are happening and give folks encouragement to continue the fight?
I really think it's I'm gonna answer with the way I answered with the first question. It's about just reporting, and so it's about everyone knowing their roles. Are we writing about the past? Are we writing? Is your role to write about the past? Is your role to write about the present, or is it the future to write ourselves out, literally write ourselves out of this situation? It's been done with Afrofuturism. Um, in my opinion, we may have spent a little bit too much time writing about the past and now look. And so as the word is a strong weapon and it can be used for good and evil. And um, while it's about everybody just needs to know what their role is individually. We all know our role is to write. But and I've been like with me, I wrote a whole project about what's going on right now. So I'm past that. It's set aside waiting to get published. Now for me, I wrote about the past, I wrote about the present, everything going on now. I feel like I need to um, push into the future. What is our future going to look like? And not pessimistically. And I can't believe I'm saying that because that's my thing, that's my study. But we had to, but it's part of the process. You have to look at the past, you have to look at the future, as pessimistic as it is. A lot of people are right there.
Yeah.
And that's where I was like when this was starting. I'm like, we need to look at where we are right now, and no one wanted to look at where they are right now until we're where we are right now. So it's just a matter of just knowing where you are spiritually, where you are um, with yourself personally. The writerly thing. We're always looking
Yeah.
within, and has to be we have to be honest with ourselves, and yeah, and just kind of try to push forward and see our way through this.
Yeah, I think my big thing right now too is truth telling, right? Like I can't tell it nicely anymore because I feel like so many people tried to tell it nicely that it didn't get across. So I've sort of I've given that up, and so now I'm really into truth telling. I mean, and you know how I always do bring a little piece of the past in, because so many times we are repeating ourselves with stuff, that we've learned not to do, and we're back doing it again. So well, listen, ladies, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking your time out to share your thoughts with us today. This was great. I mean, I'm a little bit biased. I love you all,
Mhm.
but I think that if the folks go out and if they whatever, look at the bottom of the screen or what have you. Heather will tell you what to do,
Yeah.
but they will see all of the other wonderful things that you guys have going on. So just from my heart, thank you so much.
Thank you for
Thank
having us.
you.
Abby, thank you. Heather, thank you. Yes.
Oh, where's that? The Right Women Books Book Fest is always happy to have EC Poetry and Prose and the poets that it brings um it's such a great addition to the energy of the women in the event. And thank you, Patty, as always. We appreciate you so much. I want to go around to say a round of goodbyes, and I want to start with Patty and ask Patty, where can you be reached? What do you have coming up here soon that people can look for? And I'll just start with you.
Alrighty, thank you so much. Well, the most exciting thing is that EC Poetry and Prose is now a 501c3 public charity. And so we're super excited about that. I know right now
Yay.
funding is crazy, but we're still going to try to start getting better funding. We already did receive a small grant, so we're excited about that. In addition, on the publishing side, as you know, I'm also a partner with Terry Simon in Fallen Tree Press, and we are kicking off Sassafras Books, which is a another publishing entity of Fallen Tree Press. So we're really excited about Sassafras. We'll have some new authors coming out in 2020 at the end of this year, December, and then 2020, 2026. So just keep looking, keep up with the website, with our pages, and what we're doing, and we love seeing you guys. So thank you.
And where do you like to hang out online?
We hang out online at ecpoetryandprose.org. We hang out at fallentreepress.com. I do have a page in Works that is Patty Ross the Poet .com. So yeah, you can probably find us on those three. We're on Instagram, EC Poetry Prose, and we're on Threads sometimes. But IG is usually we're usually
We're
pretty
very
good.
busy people. We're busy writing things,
Yep,
right?
and Facebook.
We're online when we can be.
Exactly.
Thank you, Mari. Could you tell us what you've got coming up? If you've got anything going on you'd like people to know about, and where we can find you.
Sure. So I think as far as things going on, I will say, first of all, big shout out to EC Poetry and Prose for welcoming me as a new member, I think a couple years back now. And so, you know, if you ever are wondering where I'm performing, it'll be with them. So certainly go to the EC Poetry and Prose website, look at our upcoming events. That's where I'll be, you know, featuring if I'm able to make it out to the venues. And then as far as connecting, I don't really have much of a social media presence, but if anyone wants to directly contact me, I do have an email, maritbugayong@gmail.com.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Kathleen, what have you got coming up, and where can we find you?
Okay. I have a new chapbook coming out top of 2026. It's called Young Girl in the Flower of Time, and it's
Ooh.
being released by Lily Poetry Press. Really happy, really proud of that. And if you want to find me, I have a website, Kathleen Hellen. It's hopelessly out of date, but hey.
Okay. Are you on are you on socials at all?
Yeah, actually, I should have said, Heather, all of these poets are on EC Poetry and Prose's page.
Okay.
We try to cross-pollinate as much as we can, and
Great.
collaborate as much as we can. So usually if you find one of us, you'll pretty much find the rest.
Okay.
That
Lori?
sounds like a threat.
Lori, what have you got coming up, and outside of EC Poetry and Prose's website, do you hang out anywhere online?
No, not at the moment.
Okay.
That is typically it. I'm doing more of the like the internal writing kind of thing right now. I do, as Patty said, hope to have my book coming out in 2026. It's called Fugue Driving, and it's a collection of little chapbook of essays. And yes, you can always find me with this gang here that I love so much. Yeah, so anywhere Patty is, I try to be.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And Zorina, what have you got going on?
Well, this Saturday, I'll be presenting a workshop at the From Brain to Bookshelf Writers Conference.
Okay.
And it's called it's called Scripting. It's called Scripting a Book into a Movie.
Okay.
So I'll be teaching that at 11:45 Saturday. You can look up Maryland Writers Association for more
I was going to ask you the Maryland
information.
Writers Conference. Okay.
Okay.
I'll be doing that. I have a story published in the latest Chicken Soup for the Soul book that's coming out. Here we go.
Wonderful.
Actually,
Christmas edition.
Yeah, next week. It's going to drop next week.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I'm really happy about that.
What a nice gift. Hey, everybody, that's a great holiday gift. Okay,
It is.
well, wonderful. And I know you're on Instagram because I know I've seen you on Instagram.
All of my handles are at Zorina Exie, ZorinaExie. So I pretty much try to stay consistent that way.
Great. Well, thank you so much, everybody. If you're watching this and listening to it, please check these ladies' work out. It's totally worth it. They make great gifts. If you want to connect with somebody over poetry, this is a great way to do it, is to go to a reading, to check out a live performance, to grab a book and go have a picnic, do anything you can to support local and independent authors and artists. And if some of these, if any of you are published wide, you can
We
always
are.
find out. Okay,
Yeah, we
so
all are. Most of us are on Amazon, so they can, you can probably pick it up
you
from there. But if you look
great.
at the EC Poetry and Prose website, we also will have our events for 2026. We're scheduling now, so.
Fantastic. And if there's an indie bookstore that you love, you can always contact that indie bookstore and ask them to carry carry their work, and also ask your library to carry their work. So, all right. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate you, and happy poetry reading and writing.
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.